All right, we are live, and let's check on Facebook. Not going to get too much. Oh, yeah, we're going. Perfect. So I guess we'll just kind of give, maybe wait a minute or two, but we'll just do a quick introduction. So this is actually the first time that we've done this in this sort of format. So Mindset and Milestones, we typically are doing like social media sort of posts and sharing information, but ultimately our mission is to share information with girls about starting their own businesses or nonprofits and sort of teaching and advocating for entrepreneurship as a skill set. My name is DeAndrea, for anyone who doesn't know, and I founded Mindset and Milestones to do exactly what I just mentioned, but we also wrote a workbook to kind of communicate those messages at home. And so the purpose of like this live that we're doing right now and sort of what we hope to continue to do is to share the stories and the work of young women like the wonderful human that's in the screen next to me about what they're doing to use entrepreneurial skills and making impact and trying to bring their ideas to life and have done so in a really successful way. So I'm super excited to introduce Shivali. And I am so very excited about sharing what she's been up to because I really appreciate the work that she's done. And so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of her bio before we kind of jump in. So Shivali is a high school senior from the Bay Area and passionate about equitable computer science education and bridging the gap in STEM. By founding her organization, which is now a nonprofit, Girl Genius Magazine, her team has reached 470,000 plus girls from 46 states and 75 countries through their magazine issues, virtual events, social media campaigns, and when Shivali is not working on Girl Genius, she can be found interning at companies like Verizon, 3D printing keychains for local organizations, or organizing hackathons throughout the Bay Area. So obviously, she is a very, very busy person. So we're so excited to have you today. And just kind of, I've already given an intro, but I'd love to just hear, a little bit more about what Girl Genius is and what y'all do.
Yeah, for sure. So Girl Genius is a 501c3 that strives to connect, inspire, and empower girls in STEM. We do this in 4 key ways. The first way is by releasing quarterly magazine issues, which are written by high school and college students that serve as guides, such as how to apply to college as a STEM major. The next way that we empower girls in STEM is through our social media and outreach. We post a lot of inspiring women in STEAM on our Instagram and have takeover weeks like Women in Arts and Women in Science Week, which is really, really exciting because you get to learn about cool new jobs and also get some informational tips from our team. And the third way that we close the staff is through our YouTube videos. We have a YouTube series where we interview a lot of women in STEAM, but also provide advice on applying to college and highlight some forgotten women in STEAM in history. And our final way that we strive to bridge the gender gap is through our virtual events. We hold around 2 to 3 virtual workshops every week, and they can range from topics like doing bioinformatics research to starting your own robotics team. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do.
That is amazing and definitely necessary. And it's just so interesting because I've actually checked out Girl Genius several times and, watching the takeovers and sort of seeing what y'all do in your workshops. It's such substantive information. But beyond that, there's just, so many ways to connect and sort of build community. So if you haven't checked them out before, please do. But sort of the first question that I would really think is a great place for us to get started. What really sparked the idea for Girl Genius? Like, what was the problem that you felt like you were, needing to address in some way?
Yeah, so for me, living in the Bay Area, there were a lot of events called hackathons, which are 12 to 36-hour coding events. And basically, because I really didn't have a lot of people at my high school who were interested in tech and entrepreneurship, I went to these events probably at least every 2 weeks. And, I'd work with people across Silicon Valley on developing an MVP within 12 to 24 hours for the first time. And it was really, really challenging, but also exciting to meet other people who had similar interests to me that I couldn't necessarily find at my high school. And, although the hackathons can connect people temporarily, it doesn't necessarily do that in the long term. When we would submit our projects, our connection just kind of stopped with us following each other on Instagram. And I was still having a void of that network of not only people who are interested in tech and entrepreneurship, but also fulfilling that void of female representation through my STEM classes and engineering classes. And so, like every high school student, I went to Google and I found this organization called Built by Girls, which is a nonprofit that aims to bridge the gender gap in tech. And I joined their community Slack, and my world changed because I met over 2,000 girls interested in both STEM and entrepreneurship that I still talk to on a daily basis. And seeing that network come to life made me realize that zero platforms existed for people to actually connect with each other, but at the same time work on a long-term project. And so I think that really served as a catalyst for me to form this organization.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that not having the space to really connect with each other long term after you had built those connections was sort of something that you were lacking, and then also the lack of representation. So when we think about what's really happening here, like we know that young women are interested, that there's opportunities to get involved. Why do you feel like there just weren't that many women in the room? Like, or what do you think are some things that sort of contribute to that sort of gender imbalance being so stark?
I think definitely like female and male stereotypes do indirectly play a role in, the types of classes that you choose. Like I grew up in a really supportive family where I was able to take paid computer science classes, and it became very normal for me from like since the fifth grade to be the only girl when it's a paid opportunity. And it's not even just among the students, but also the teachers. And so I think that's a really big way that a lot of people underestimate. Even in 2020, those standards still affect people in a lot of different ways. I think another way that also people are discouraged is honestly, again, just not seeing yourself represented in the room. It definitely makes you take a step back and question whether you belong in an area. Like in my computer science classes, there are like 3 girls out of 37 students. And then at my high school's engineering academy, there's like 8 girls in my junior class. And so it's definitely, the gender gap still exists in Silicon Valley. And I think that, seeing yourself represented not only just as a gender, but also with other factors is extremely important and towards making STEM a lot more inclusive.
Right. I mean, there's, tons of ways that we can identify why it's important for us to have representation, not just sort of seeing yourself, which is incredibly important, right? Like a lot of people like to say you can't be what you can't see. And so being able to see someone like yourself doing these things is so important, but also that we are in the room when we're solving problems, because we can solve problems that actually are related to people who are like us, who deal with things that maybe, the current sort of overrepresentation of certain kinds of individuals in Silicon Valley and areas that really have a lot of say over what gets built and what doesn't, that they might not be thinking about. So super important. And, I think that when you're sort of taking these steps, there's just so much that goes into that. So I'm curious, what was really the sort of process like for you going from this is an idea that I have to here's my organization? Like what kind of pushed you to say, I'm actually going to take action?
I think that for me, I really wanted to take action after after running my Girls Who Code club at school, because we had always been underneath the club minimum of number of like members, which was 11. And so although there was, a few people coming in, and that was really exciting to me because, I personally witnessed at like these hackathons that like the gender ratio is really, really bad, or even at like coding classes and camps. And I think that seeing that things like clubs at schools aren't necessarily always the most effective way towards you leveraging that network, because I had to go and find my own people my own way. But I know that's really intimidating, going into a 24-hour event with no one behind you. And so for me, that really allowed me to see that like taking action and creating like a more virtual environment and network was really, really important just because, you know, you can meet someone who's maybe a state over or 40 minutes away from you that you didn't know before and like have their information, be able to contact them every time. And I think that some of the people that I've met through Gigi, like, you know, there's one person I like to talk about a lot. Her name's Abby. She's from Michigan. We have been together since we've been sophomores. And so I feel like we just kind of grown up together. It's really nice to just know that like there aren't just people interested in what you're interested in, like, you know, at your school, that there are people beyond.
Yeah, I mean, and it's you know interesting because a lot of other generations older than us or think about the fact that we have technology, and sometimes we really forget about the power of it, like beyond using social media and being able to watch YouTube or just having access to information all the time, but that we really can connect with people from different walks of life and that live in different places. And I think that it's so cool that Girl Genius has been able to find a way to sort of encourage that, especially with young women who probably are not seeing or don't know a lot of people around them who might also be interested in coding or in STEM sort of at large. And so in this process of kind of building this community, what are some obstacles that you sort of, or even just one like notable example of an obstacle that really was sort of standing in your way in terms of making this as great as you thought it could be?
I think that for me, at first, it was really just finding people to join because, you know, despite coming from a high school with 3,000 people, I only knew one other girl who wanted to pursue like computer science. And so finding the disparity in like my city is really, really hard for me to like find people to join like an initiative that aim to solve the exact problem. And so, like you said, I think that the power of social media is very much underestimated. And I definitely use that to like leverage the network that I had built at that time and try to find people. But I think that as I've grown as a leader, it's definitely been the comparison aspect because there's so many girls in STEM organizations. And, you know, I think it's very easy to feel that, oh, we are competing against each other. But I think that, you know, having organized like so many virtual events now, I've really gotten to see that like it doesn't matter if there's so many organizations, we're all fighting for the same thing. And so someone else's success doesn't always mean that, you know, your impact is undermined.
Yeah, and I love that sort of nugget of wisdom there because we see that. I mean, social media has created that in a lot of ways in general, or not created, but sort of exacerbated that issue of being able to look at someone else for anything and say, well, they have this and they have that. Like, why should I even try? And so I can imagine like you thinking about that in relation to giants like Girls Who Code or Built by Girls, amazing organizations doing impeccable work at large scale, probably thinking like, well, do they even need this anymore? But then you look back at like the micro scale and you look around your hackathons and your classrooms and you say, yes, like this is still necessary. This is still needed because it's not here yet. Right. So I think that's a great lesson for anyone thinking about, starting something or trying to make impact, that if you still identify, if you still see the problem around you, that means that whatever's out there is not necessarily doing the job yet. And so there's still more work to be done. So I love that. And, there's interesting things about all of this. And I think that's a great sense of confidence in sort of your own abilities, as well as in, the sort of mission and impact that your organization has the power to make. So I just, would ask about that. Like, where do you feel your sort of confidence comes from? Like when you feel yourself kind of losing steam or thinking about, maybe this is not worth it anymore. Maybe I'm not doing as much as I thought I was. We all have those days. Where do you feel like you kind of, get your boost again?
I think that actually like COVID-19 has really helped me gain my confidence in my organization just because I started doing this thing where I had coffee chats with not just individuals in the Girl Genius team and community Slack, but also in the nonprofit and hackathon community worldwide. And I opened, my schedule from 5 to 7 every day, and I have a call with someone. And it's really, really nice to like sit with someone, especially during this time because we're all like trapped in our houses. But also, I think that for me, I think that there was a time where like I was so caught up in the numbers of the amount of people that were coming to our workshops, or the amount of people who followed us on Instagram. But those conversations made me realize that like the non-tangible impacts are sometimes greater than like the numerical ones, because I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm helping them navigate their junior year during this time, or start their own hackathon in their community. And I think that that's way more valuable than just having like 100 more Instagram followers and hoping that they see the content that you're producing. And so I think that that's really helped me identify that like the work I am doing has purpose. And it's just, it's constantly in the back of my head of like, whenever I'm really tired, I just remind myself, I'm like, I'm doing this for a reason.
Right. Absolutely. Like thinking about, what's your why? Like where's sort of the kind of root of my passion for this? And I'm not doing this for me necessarily. I'm doing this for all of the people, all of the young women who need this. And I guess it's something that I kind of tell myself too sometimes when I'm sort of like losing energy. It's like, this is not for you. Like you did this because you felt like it was needed. So if you still feel like it's needed, you need to keep going. So I think it's just something to sort of hold on to, and sort of being able to identify that and like have it to return to when you're having those days. Super, super important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I just think that in this conversation around, personal growth in that way and sort of learning so much from the organization, now that you're sort of, a rising senior and you're moving into the next phases of your life, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years, both you and, Girl Genius?
I think that for me, definitely going to college to pursue like business and some form of tech is something I want to do. But I think with Girl Genius, I've been like training my successor for the past like 5 months, and I've really loved working with her. I definitely still want to be involved after I graduate, just because I think that, my co-lead and I, we were pitching in a competition, and, the judges were just like, all right, why would you stop this after high school? There's so much impact that you've made. And to me, that was kind of a green light, because, I think that a lot of people think that, after you move on to college, you just move on from the things you did in high school. But I think that, passing this role down to like the next generation of students is really, really important, because there's so much that I've learned in terms of personal growth, but also leading a team, knowing when, you're communicating well and when you're not communicating well. And I think that those lessons are so valuable that they should be passed down to other individuals who want to solve the same problem in their community. But I definitely want to help out with the in-person events whenever that's possible. But yeah, that's where I see myself in the next 5 years.
Well, I mean, I think that there's no better way to end it than that. Thank you so much for sort of sharing your experience and the things that you've learned. And I definitely will keep note of the hack that you mentioned for, just kind of clearing some space to make a new connection and like, have a dedicated effort to that. So I'll be keeping that. Thank you very much. And, for anyone who's interested, please feel free to, reach out. Learn more about sort of this organization. I think that there's so many ways, especially for young women, to get involved and to learn something super valuable from all the work that Shivali and her team at Girl Genius are doing. So we have a couple links that people can get access to you. But if that's all we have, I'd just like to say again, thank you for coming and for taking the time to talk with us about your organization. And that's our show. Mindset Milestones will be back next month with another young woman founder, and you don't want to miss it, so make sure that you connect with us as well on wherever's best for you, Instagram, Facebook, newsletter if your emails are jam, and we will see you all very soon.
Thank you.